All right, good morning, everyone. This is Dan Drood with the eGroup team here. Thanks for those of you that have been able to jump on today with us. Looking forward to digging into the productivity side of Microsoft 365. Uh, got my co-host on, Jason Webster, who I will have introduce himself in just a moment here. But like I said, this is Dan, and I will kind of get us kicked off here as we get this show rolling. So um, to get started, kind of talk about today's goal and how we're going to walk through the process of getting there. Really, what we want you to take away from today's session is how our modern workplace roadmap is able to deliver your business the info it needs to basically unpack and implement everything that's available to you within the Microsoft 365 suite. So I know there's probably a lot of familiarity with M365, of course. You maybe have full E5 and have all the tools, but aren't sure where to start, or maybe you're evaluating that step up in licensing and what to do with that. We'll talk about kind of all of those different scenarios as we get through this, but to get things going, we'll do kind of a brief introduction to eGroup for those of you that may not know us. We'll talk into the mini sessions and then talk about some examples. So with that being said, we'll talk real quick about who eGroup is. Like I said, for those of you that don't know us, we've been around for about 20 years. We're headquartered out of Charleston, South Carolina, and we have a very heavy focus on Microsoft, what we call two clouds, right? The Microsoft 365 cloud and the Azure cloud. And we help our customers pretty much from A to Z in terms of everything like architecture and design out of the gate to getting in there and making sure that things are properly set up, that you're maintaining your governance and compliance as needed, and then extending that out to other solutions to tie in for engagements like data protection, disaster recovery, things like virtual desktops. So we're nationally recognized as a kind of a top 30 out of maybe 80,000 or so partners. And that is what enables us to deliver the solutions that we'll be talking about today, as well as provide access to some of the funding programs that tie into the engagements that we do here. So very heavy on the Microsoft side, excuse me. But of course, we, like I mentioned, tie that into a number of other solutions in the portfolio. These are solutions that our team has vetted extensively. And the goal is to really bring simplicity and ease of management to data center and cloud, right? So we talk about modern data center architecture and tie that into Microsoft. We can, of course, tackle the network and security side of things and tie that into Microsoft. And like I mentioned earlier, being able to take a look at other elements such as data protection or disaster recovery and how that aligns with various Microsoft technologies. Our goal is to kind of weave everything together in a way that makes sense for the business and deliver those solutions and support those solutions as a trusted advisor for our customers. So with that being said, we have a lot to cover here today. So I want to kick it over to Jason Webster, who will get us on the adoption roadmap.
Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate everybody joining this morning. Appreciate the introduction. Hey, everybody. Name's Jason Webster. We're the principal for the Mid-Atlantic for eGroup and have been working with Microsoft solutions for over a decade, specifically, through various inflection points and transitions as we've led to where we are today with Microsoft Azure Cloud Services as well as Microsoft 365. So just kind of taking it back for a second, really want to just as focus on what we're going to talk about and what the opportunity is, just to kind of clearly state it up front. As Dan mentioned, we're going to cover a lot today. It's my hope that I'm going to share some things that we do. All of these things are things that we are commonly asked for, things that we've helped other organizations with. I always like to say, sometimes eGroup's value in these solutions is that we get to do things 100 times that an organization or an individual may only do once. There's only so many times you can migrate a service to a cloud, but we get to see it across the variety of landscapes. So I want to share some of those stories and share some of those common things in hopes that maybe one of them resonates to a challenge that you're having and something that we may be able to help you solve. With that, we have a series of what we call our eGroup Modern Workplace Roadmap sessions that we call mini sessions, where we used to, and still do today, used to go spend, a day or two inside of a Microsoft training center, inside of your office, inside of our office, delivering roadmap sessions, talking about the full gamut of what Microsoft 365 can deliver with a deliverable of building you a roadmap that's executable, actionable, has things like total cost of ownership, licensing plans, implementation plans, and all the things that you need to ensure that your end user success. And the whole reason we deploy these solutions to provide secure, productive workplaces for our users so that they can service your clients. So how we're doing that with mini sessions, and then again, share some common engagement examples, and it might spark some things and challenges that you have, as well as doing how we're going to get started. So let me jump back in and get right to it. Couple things. I always like to talk about incentive programs. I mean, obviously with Microsoft Cloud Solutions, see a lot of familiar names in the audience. Some that aren't familiar, but there are programs, whether we're talking about Azure or Microsoft 365, that can help you put together plans, help you with migrations, help you assess security, all these different things that are available. Deploy teams. Solutions that you may not be adopting, maybe haven't fully adopted, or you're looking to adopt in the future. There are incentive programs typically available to help you get started, and in some cases help you deploy these technologies, depending on a variety of levers that we can pull. So just want to call out that those incentive programs are available. We have to kind of understand your need to fit you into the right one and see what's available, but that's something we can certainly help you out with, both for Microsoft 365, some of the things we're going to talk about today, as well as Azure, or in between, because sometimes these things are very much so interrelated. And when we talk about Microsoft 365, I think it's important. It's kind of a new brand. A lot of people know Office 365, where commonly they're thinking about, Office 365. That's where I go for my mail, my files, some of those things. But Office 365 is the productivity suite for end users, and is only one part of the overall Microsoft 365 solution. So when you think of Office 365, you're thinking of things like my email, my corporate internet, where I go to do some automation, where I go to collaborate on meetings like today with Teams, how I may do my voice and conferencing, how I use things like Power Platform for business process automation, how, as if I'm on the technology side, how do I ensure security and compliance and report that back, and manage things like data loss prevention from a risk management standpoint, do data protection of all this important data that lives in the Microsoft cloud. All of that stuff's in the Office 365 suite. But Microsoft 365 is much more than that. It also extends into enterprise mobility and security of how do we secure endpoints? How do we secure the cloud? How do we do things like multi-factor authentication, mobile device management? How can we automate things like patch management, update management, and even not only just secure our Office 365 resources, but how can we secure those third-party SaaS applications or internal applications that maybe you're delivering to your customers or your end users are accessing from to do their daily jobs? How can we do that through the common platform to ensure that we have simplicity and security across the entire environment with like enterprise mobility? And then furthermore, things like Windows 10, Windows 11 that's coming out, whether that's virtual desktops, physical endpoints, Surface devices, even MacBooks. When we get onto the Mac OS outside of Windows 10, we can do a lot of things around, endpoint protection, malware protection, advanced threat protection, and encryption of devices to bring it all together into a unified solution that allows you to have productive users engaging a lot of things on a series of products that are designed to work together and designed to work together effectively. But as an organization, you can enforce policy, ensure security flexibly, whether people are working remotely, whether they're mobile, whether they're in an office, or wherever they need to be, through either physical or virtual devices or through SaaS applications as needed. So kind of end to end with everything, not just providing email and document services. And what we do inside of our workshop is really help you plan that route to success. So understanding, what we call meeting you where you're at on your journey. A lot of people have already migrated email to the Microsoft cloud. Maybe it's documents, as I mentioned. But, what are these other components to ensure that your cloud is configured right? What are the additional opportunities to consolidate products, to bring things together, to enhance security, enhance productivity, simplify configurations, reduce costs, even understanding where you're at is really important to us, and then understanding where you need to be as an organization, where you want to be as an organization to be able to better service your clients, is all about the roadmaps that we're doing, whether we're talking about a mini session for a point engagement or we're talking about a full kind of Microsoft 365 productivity roadmap along the way. So understanding those business needs, as I've mentioned, is incredibly important to us, because obviously without understanding what you all need to succeed, it's really hard for us to build a plan. So that's where I always ask, our most common effective things is just talk to us. Let's understand what you are, and let's figure out, what you need and how we can help so that we can make this really relevant to you. Once we have that understanding, developing that technical vision, of what the future could look like and those possibilities, and then doing some level of assessment, design, workshop, a lot of different words for it, to build you an actionable plan to get there that has all the information you need, both technically, deployment plans, what it's going to be the impact, how are we going to communicate change to the end users, how are we going to manage change, how are we going to do things like total cost of ownership to say, is this going to cost us more, cost us less, cost us the same, and is it going to make our users more productive, or is the pain of change greater than the pain of staying the same type activities? So all of those is really what we're interested in. So as we kind of move forward, what I'm trying to share with you today, again, is some things that we see as common pain points organizations have to, and how we can address those problems in hopes that we can have some relevance, right? So to get us kicked off, Microsoft 365 Identity and Security, it's probably one of the most popular things we see, particularly with the pandemic's still going on. People are still working remotely. We're still trying to ensure that workers can work from anywhere securely with devices that the corporate owns. Maybe it's their personal device, maybe it's virtual desktops. But how do we manage that identity? How do we secure people's access back to the data center, to cloud applications and things like that? And that really circles around Azure AD, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on capabilities. This is a simple yet very effective way, what the product we call conditional access, to be able to create those policies of when, how, and who can access your information from where, and have it be flexible enough to treat people that are on a known device in the office a little bit differently than maybe someone that's remotely on a device that you don't know, versus someone that is overseas and can't access, and you don't want them to access. Conditional access controlled by Azure AD, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on allows that flexible access to be able to secure all of those different things, but keep the policies flexible enough to make it efficient for your end users, so they don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to be able to access what they need. They can be productive. And then also a component of that is mobile device management. A lot of things we learned when organizations moved outside the firewall and outside the network, they didn't come into the office anymore, is that VPNs weren't sufficient to ensure that devices got updates, that we were able to push new policies, we were able to manage and understand what is on these devices that are out there accessing our information. Cloud-based mobile device management through Microsoft Intune, even going back into co-management with things like System Center Configuration Manager in your data center, and additional programs like Autopilot to be able to have somebody pick up a device or ship them a device that is not configured directly, and be able to have them authenticate, enroll, and get all the applications they need without ever coming to the office, is exactly what we're talking about with mobile device management. So a combination of identity management, securing who the user is, as well as securing the device in which they access, all comes together in those conditional access policies, so that we can create robust yet flexible policies to ensure security. And one of the most popular things we're seeing today is with cybersecurity insurance with organizations. These things have become not just a nice to have, but a must have in order to maintain cybersecurity insurance. So seeing a lot of organizations ask us about that and how they can address these types of gaps to ensure that they can keep their cybersecurity insurance up to date. Governance, and you kind of diving into a couple of these. Obviously when we talk about endpoint protection, this is, a lot of people will ask, like, how is that different than, mobile device management? When we talk about endpoint protection versus mobile device management, mobile device management, MDM, we're really talking about how do we keep a device updated, get the telemetry and the signals to understand, is it a corporate owned device, is it not, the different postures of it. With endpoint protection, we're really talking about things like antivirus. We're talking about things like intelligent antivirus, things that can address modern day threats. So that lends itself more towards Microsoft Defender, whether that's Microsoft Defender for endpoints, whether that's Microsoft Defender for your Office 365 environment. The idea there is ensuring that we are using cloud capabilities that the local device does not have the capability to do, kind of the AI machine learning capabilities to be able to inspect files, links, all of those things that are happening, to detect anomalous activity that's, by definition anomalous, or things that maybe are zero-day threats, and identify risks, because ultimately protection from our ransomware is nobody's truly protected from those zero-day threats without the ability to identify things really quickly, kind of pin them down, and then recover from them. And when we talk about governance, data loss prevention, and compliance, for those organizations, that might be having PCI, HIPAA, SOC compliance, just different things along those CGIS along the ways. I mean, there's tons of different compliance standards that we need to meet out there. How do we ensure that these devices and applications and cloud applications meet those? And how can we simplify our reporting of that? So using products like Office 365 Governance, not 366, Compliance Manager, Data Loss Prevention, and Azure AD Premium allow us to be able to take templates, say, for example, PCI compliance, apply that to the environment, use Compliance Manager to tune those templates to your specific compliance needs, and then report back on a periodic basis as audits require, or detect things that fall out of compliance. Maybe it detects some data where it shouldn't be. Maybe it even disallows that data where it shouldn't be. And even the things like data loss prevention, where we need to do things like litigation and legal holes, common things to ensure compliance, where organizations just want it done. They want to be able to report on it effectively, and they want the platform to be able to monitor it. These are the solutions that we use to make that happen. Moving out of the security space a little bit, enabling collaboration. Again, exactly what we're doing today. Like, how can we collaborate with people regardless of where we are in the office? How can we collaborate, whether it's voice, text, type, video conferencing? I can say the way I collaborate has changed significantly over the last couple of years. And it's not just down to virtual meetings. It's the adoption of Microsoft Teams has changed a lot of behaviors organizationally for both eGroup as well as a lot of our clients, where maybe eGroup was an email heavy as well as text heavy organization prior. Bringing all of these things together, what we find is I get a lot more messages on my mobile phone through the Teams chat app. I get more calls from internal as well as external audiences through voice, just making Teams dialing voice as opposed to dialing phone numbers. Obviously, have a lot of meetings going on, and I also have a lot of external collaboration with our partners that happen through text messages, as opposed to trying to figure out 30 minutes in the day to have a call. To be able to do it, they text directly through Microsoft Teams chat, lands in there. We have a quick collaboration, and we're able to take those 30-minute calls that take sometimes a day or two to find a common spot to organize. We can have those in a group chat and solve a problem within 5 minutes. So being able to bring that together, Microsoft Teams is a centralized hub of how organizations can bring multiple lines of communication into a single platform. And then when combined with things like voice solutions, it doesn't matter if you're in your car, whether you're on your laptop, whether you're at home. If someone even dials your desk number, how does that ring into Teams? How does that ring into the Teams app? Come over your Apple CarPlay, your Android devices, all of those different things in a unified setting. And then how can we disable those when we don't want to be disturbed as well, right? Trying not to make everybody available 24/7 all the time. So all of those things coming together, we found helps an organization simplify. But then when you combine that with the security capabilities, you get kind of a multiplier there, because now you're not talking about securing multiple applications. You're talking about securing one platform with a common set of tools and being able to provide those end users a single tool that can do a lot of the capabilities for them. And then we obviously don't need to talk about this a lot. You can do webinars and live events. Obviously, we choose to do Teams meetings. Teams webinar, it kind of has that meeting feel to it where we can all see each other, we can all chat. We have a little bit more advanced controls over, can the audience present? Are you a presenter? What can you see? Who can chat? Those types of things, so that you can keep control. Or you can go all the way to live events where you just do a true broadcast and nobody can see who's in the meeting and things along those lines. Those capabilities are there as well, so that whether you're presenting external audiences or internal audiences, you have flexible ways to be able to present that content, record it, keep it live forever, and make things happen. So we get a lot of questions around, how can we do these things? How can we manage our marketing events, our internal presentations, our learning management platforms, all of those things? How can we communicate better and more effectively internally, particularly with remote work and those things still going on? Back to a little bit more of a simple thing. Exchange Online still alive and well. Having done over 1 million users migrated to from Exchange on premises, everything from Novell systems, everything from G Suite, just different platforms, even some of the lesser known platforms, hosted Exchange, hosted mail systems, moved all into Exchange Online. The ability to use Exchange Online to do email and not have to maintain mail servers, not have to maintain that storage, I think is a very common theme, and being able to secure that. But beyond that is, most organizations are there. Some are still making that. Some are still, they're going through mergers and acquisitions where they need to figure out how to bring two companies' email platforms together once they're in the cloud. We do a lot of those types of engagements. To make sure that people's mail systems, wherever you're coming from, works seamlessly, and we can bring users together and make sure that mail flows and is secure, and you have all the security you need around it. But probably more so these days, organizations are looking into products like OneDrive, which I'll talk a little bit about, and as well as modern file shares. I wanted to show this up there as well, because people say, okay, we've got our Exchange there. People are collaborating. They're using maybe OneDrive for personal documents. That's connected into Teams. We're trying to figure out exactly what SharePoint's going to be. Maybe you had it in the past. Maybe you're new to it. We're doing some automation with Power Platform. Organizations saying, okay, what do I do with these file shares that we have? We've got like our corporate drives. We've got these directory drives. We've got files we know that we don't need, that have been out there forever, and we probably need to get rid of. We've got tight, some have tight, some have loose governance over that. But what do we do with these file shares? We're commonly having this conversation and helping organizations understand when to move file shares into OneDrive, when to move them into SharePoint Online, whether and how to present that through a product like Teams, or how, if you migrate to these solutions, you can present them right back to the end users as the H drive, the S drive, as they're familiar with. How synchronization of cloud files works to ensure that people have immediate access to files that they need, but can still co-collaborate with many people. Understanding what to do with file shares, whether we're talking about, I'm a small business and I have, a couple departments and gigabytes of information, all the way up to what do I do with terabytes or even petabytes of information between SharePoint Online, Teams, OneDrive, other file storage platforms, even things like Azure files, and crossing over into some of the Azure capability for some of those larger use cases like petabytes and terabytes of information. Storing that information in the cloud, it has a very beneficial capability of, it's more available, it's easier to access, it can be globally distributed if we need to, but at the same time, reduction of storage, reduction of data protection costs, all of those things that cost a lot of money to store inside of a data center, we have the ability to move those where they need to, break them up and have them in the right place, make sure they're secure, make sure they're protected, and more importantly, make sure that you never have to do a major file system refresh again every 3 to 5 years inside your data center. And actually said most importantly on that part, I think, that's of most financial importance. Probably the most important thing that I haven't said on file shares is that File shares are the #1 breeding ground for ransomware. That's where most ransomware attacks are not initially created. That's typically through an identity issue, kind of the first things we were talking about. But once that identity issue is compromised, they seek out file shares to be able to spread through the environment, stay there latently, kind of poke around, figure out what they can do, and then detonate. So the elimination of legacy file shares on premises greatly reduces your risk to ransomware. And we can talk about the technical details of exactly how that happens and what the cloud does to meet that requirement that it's really impossible on premises. And then further into some of the data protection capabilities is there's two lenses on this slide, right? One is, why is Azure Virtual Desktop a data protection solution? Well, it's really a work from anywhere, but at the same time, the idea with Azure Virtual Desktop is we have legacy applications. Maybe we don't want those exposed to the outside. Maybe we want to keep all the information to the four walls of the data center. Our common VDI scenario, leveraging those conditional access policies as well as Azure Virtual Desktop, we're able to provide people virtual desktops, virtual apps that run inside of Azure data centers that don't ever exfiltrate data back to the end user's client, whether they're remote, they're on the road, they're overseas, in the office, wherever they're at, so that we can create even a tighter boundary by bringing the user's experience into the four walls of the data center, so to speak. In this case, it's Azure, and streaming that experience back to them so that we don't have to worry about things along the lines of, where do files live beyond my firewall? All that access is in there. So for those high security, maybe legacy apps, things along those lines, a lot of government cases and just maybe PCI cases, some healthcare is another big one for this, manufacturing with IP information. We see a lot of this. Being able to bring people to the information as opposed to bringing the information to them can add that extra layer of security, but also add that extra layer of flexibility so that if you need to recover and someone loses their laptop, you can provide them a virtual desktop that they can access over the web and use as needed. And then lastly on this one, with data protection for Microsoft 365, I always go back to Microsoft cites in their terms of service that clients should back up their Microsoft 365 data and other cloud data, not just Microsoft data, with a third-party application. Microsoft does a lot of things from a data protection standpoint to make sure your information is available. But Microsoft 365, Office 365 is not a backup product. There is not a backup that is what we call in the IT industry air-gapped from the production information to ensure that if something gets ransomware, you're going to get encrypted across all that information, and or maybe someone gains access to administrative controls for your Office 365 environment, and they're able to circumvent things and delete maliciously, or more importantly, more cases are accidentally done this way. Someone runs a script with great intent but unintended consequences. You can delete, and we've seen it happen, people delete information that is unrecoverable from Microsoft. And Microsoft will say in their terms of service what they provide, but just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean it's backed up. So whether you're using a third-party backup solution, by the way, Rubrik SaaS backup is fantastic for this. It's low cost, it's per user base. They do all the air gapping just like they do in their enterprise products. But having a backup copy of your information, your documents, your emails, your calendar entries, all of that stuff allows you to recover quickly. And if you, in the event you get something like a ransomware, you can ensure that there is an air gap between that so that the single credentials or multiple credentials that compromise your production environment cannot compromise your backup environment. So highly suggested there. So those were just some things that we see. Like, again, these are all mini engagements we tried to lay out there. So like whether you're interested in things like how do I back up my Microsoft 365, or tell me more about how I can use Teams more effectively, I want to go back to that slide. Is our primary thing is we want to understand your use case, right? We want to understand what you need to succeed so that we can build that technical vision, and then we can build that roadmap that you're looking for. But, again, here are some examples that we've talked about along the way that I would share with you of those common things. modernizing security. I think this I mentioned earlier. This is really, really important. It's been pandemic driven, but it's one of those things that we were doing before the pandemic. It just accelerated it because the legacy technology is kind of past its time. Applications and identity have moved to SaaS-based products. Data center focused application security and management tools haven't been able to scale to meet applications and identity being beyond the firewall. And then when users were kind of forced home, everybody was kind of like, how do we meet this challenge? So that's one that's very, very common, and we can share a lot of success, what to do as well as what not to do across a variety of use cases. Teams adoption been huge. I mean, obviously products like Teams, virtual conferencing, virtual webinars were a driver for that. But what we really learned through that is beyond the ability to talk to a lot of people and chat with people, being able to have chat, communications, persistent chat around meetings, sharing notes within meetings, quickly grabbing a screenshot, sending those things are actually being used today way more than they were being used on the similar technologies we used to use in the past, just because people have gotten more familiar with how to use the tools. And then when you extend that into being able to integrate third-party apps, whether it's collaboration on spreadsheets or even being able to just spin up a quick group to talk about a topic, dump common files in there, and have that meet policies and access wherever you need to, has been really effective. Migrations are still really important. Like I said, that's whether you're coming from on-prem to the cloud, whether you're coming from another cloud to the cloud, you're consolidating. Those things happen all the time. The eGroup team's got extensive experience in there. Cannot really even talk about all the different scenarios that we see. There's so many of them, but really understanding what your current posture is today and what challenge you're trying to meet, we can help you build a plan to solve that problem and get where you need to be. File share migrations, won't reiterate that one. We talked a lot about that. That's really big. I think that's been the next wave in cloud migrations. Is there's a stat out there that's published that says 46% of business critical data is now stored in Office 365, Microsoft 365 solutions. Some of that's intentional, some of it's not, but like, how do we do that, and how do we do it successfully and securely to make sure that we're taking care of that? And then a part of every conversation is that security topic. So how are we reducing our ransomware? How are we meeting our compliance? How are we securing end users is something that's a topic that we're having conversations every day. So if any of those challenges kind of resonate with things that you're looking for, ask us. I'd be happy to tell you stories, share common examples, outcomes, some of those things that meet your specific needs. So lastly, how to sign up. I've invited you a few times to just reach out. Always happy to talk. Always happy to learn more about your organization, learn more about your requirements. The eGroup team, myself, everybody on it, we've got a passion for solving problems and just learning about organizations. So just give us a call. Let's engage. If you work with Microsoft today, reach out to them. Ask them how we do, right? I'm hopefully confident that they would say great things as well. We've got great partnerships over there, great friends on the Microsoft side. Let's talk about how we can do this. Let's decide what these modules, these mini sessions may be a good fit. Let's schedule some time to go deeper in those. Let's finalize those details and help you get the information you need to be successful, whether that's business, technical, automation, cost reduction, the different things and outcomes that you can get out of this. But wanted to end with thank you. We try to make these brief. We try to make them,